Hello, my name's Daniel White. Some people know me as Dansky. I'm a designer and instructor with Envato Tuts Plus, and I've worked as a creative professional for about 16 years now. I love learning and I love teaching. And in this course, we're going to be jumping into Adobe XD, focusing on UI design for beginners. So if you're new to XD or UI design in general, there's going to be tons of stuff in here that I think is really going to be helpful. So we'll start by quickly wireframing a fictional app. We'll then add some design, pick some colors, and there's going to be plenty of pointers and a bit of design theory sprinkled throughout. Also, before we get started, Envato also have a platform called Envato Elements where you can download millions of creative assets, all with a commercial license for as little as $16.50 a month. And for that price, you get access to absolutely everything, and they now do a free 7-day trial. So if you're interested, check out the link below. So that's the plan. Hopefully it sounds good. Let's jump into XD and get started. Rightio, so I've opened up Adobe XD and I'm greeted by the welcome screen. Now there's lots of different presets here, or you can enter a custom size over on the right. I'm going to click this drop down and I'm going to be designing for the iPhone 14 Plus. So let's click that. It opens up a new document. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this document. I'm feeling pretty good about this, but you never know. So it's always worth saving just in case anything happens. Now I'm going to call this Teacher Do. This is going to be the name of the fictional app I'm creating. So let's save that. Okay, we're all good. Now the first thing I need to do is wireframe all of the artboards. Now there is 11 in total, I believe. So I'm going to just create a whole bunch of artboards. So it's Command or Control D to duplicate. And let's duplicate this. I will go with 8, 9, 10, 11. There we go. I can still count. Fantastic. Now I'm just going to adjust the position of these. I like to position my artboards so they kind of make sense in relation to the user journey. So this will all make sense as I start to wireframe the screens. And now I'm just going to quickly name all the artboards because I'm sure you don't want to sit and watch me do that. Now I'm going to quickly wireframe the layout for each screen. There will be no styling and no design whatsoever. And the reason we do this is to identify any user experience related issues much earlier in the process. And we can also get client and stakeholder feedback as well. So we don't go ahead and design this beautiful app and then realize that actually it doesn't work very well. That would be a problem. And the old analogy that I love to use is it's no good having a beautiful looking cake if it tastes absolutely terrible. Nobody likes a bad cake. So using the basic tools for the most part, we're going to go ahead and wireframe the screens, and then we'll get to the good stuff, the design. Also, there's a really useful plugin called Lorem Ipsum. You can use this to quickly add placeholder text, and you can download it for free from the Creative Cloud app. And there we go, looking at my example off screen, that's pretty much it for the wireframe. Now we can move on to the design, well, after we've got any feedback, but because this is my course and my design, there is no feedback. Hooray, all signed off. Let's crack on with the design. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is zoom in nice and close, and we'll give this the name Teacher Do. And I'm going to be using a font called Grand Hotel. This is a free font you can download online. I really do like this. And we're going to pop this right in the center. And let's add a background color. So I'm just using the rectangle tool. And we'll go with some sort of purple color. And I've actually got a reference here off screen, 777 FE8. There we go, that looks about right. Now, the way that I pick a lot of my colors, usually, especially for UI stuff, starts out with finding the kind of hue that I like. So if I want, let's say a red, I'll go all the way over to the right. For me personally, this is always really, really saturated, and it's not my kind of thing. So I'll go all the way to the right, but then I'll pull it back a bit to the left. This desaturates the color ever so slightly, and then I can go up and down to control the brightness. So for something like this, I'd probably end up somewhere around here. And if it's too bright, I can just pull it down a bit. If I need a bit more brightness, I just go up a little bit. So it looks like this instead of this, which to me just looks a little bit more, I guess, pleasing to the eye, but of course that is going to be subjective. But you can see that's exactly what I've done with this kind of lilac-y purple color here. I've gone a lot further over, but it just looks a lot nicer than something like this. So that's what I'm doing here. Let's send that to the back. And let's make this much bigger. So of course I'm just using a font here, but if you have an actual logo that you'd like to import from something like Illustrator, you can also do that as well. Now let's select this color. Now I've got my assets panel open here, so I'm going to actually add this color because I will be reusing this. And then I can just drag with Alt or Option to add the logo there, and then select this color here. Now the advantage to adding these colors is that if I do want to go and change them, you can see it makes things very, very easy. So we're kind of we're not just working fast, we're trying to work smart as well, which is going to save us a lot more time. So we've got our boxes here. We just need to kind of add a bit of styling. So let's go with, I think we'll go 8 for the corners there. And maybe something like 70 for the height. 76, something like that. We'll see how that looks. Now I need to start adding some fonts. Now one thing we can do is, because I've added text everywhere already, I can actually add this as a character style. And you can see it's using Apple System UI font. Again, same as the color, we can go to edit, and I could type in a different font. Roboto, so let's go with that. And you can see every other instance of that font that I was using before has now been updated. So we've got Roboto here, we've got it here as well. So that's a really quick way to update fonts across your entire document. Okay. So now I'm going to add a border color here. I've got a nice white fill, which is good. In fact, I will just add white here as well. And then, oops, steady on. Let's remove that. We want white as the fill color, and the border color, want something lighter. So again, I would use the same process for kind of picking a lighter color, something like that. I've actually got a color already. AAB 0FF. Hopefully that's correct. Yay, fantastic. So there we go. And the font color. In fact, I do have a bunch of colors, so it's probably worth me just taking a second just to add these. Cool, and there we go. So we're pretty good now. I've got a few fonts as well, so I'm just going to quickly add these in. So we've got this one here that we've been working with. So let's go and change this here, and it will update across the entire document. So we'll go with 18 points for that, and then a couple of other font sizes. We've got one that's going to be 14 points for much smaller text, and then the larger text is going to be 24. So let's go and add these in here. We'll reorganize them just so everything is in order. Now I'm going to go through all of the artboards and just make sure all of the text is using one of these 3 character styles. And again, I'm going to round off those corners. Now, one thing that I am going to do for all screens, apart from the first one, of course, is I'm going to select all of these and I'm going to change the fill color. Now I can do this from over here, but I'm actually going to be using this one. So I can right click this color, go to copy that 6-digit hex value, which refers to this color, paste it in, and then all of my screens have this kind of background color. We could do it with this one as well. Let's just see how this looks. A bit too dark. So we're going to go with this really, really light color. And then have certain elements like this just kind of bounce off it in the white. Now, as we're starting to add the design, I'm going to be paying attention to a lot more detail. One of those is going to be spacing and guides, which I think is something that is super, super important and sometimes is underappreciated. So we can actually create guides from the top by dragging down, and from the left side by dragging out. Now we can add these guides and we can do this, and there we go. But I think a quicker way to add these across the entire document is to select all of the artboards. So I'll select a couple here and we can turn on grid. So you can see we have this grid layout. Now you can adjust all of these values here, so you can change the number of columns depending on what you're doing. And then you can just turn this off and on. So we've got square as well. So depending on the kind of grid that you'd like, you can turn this off and on, and it just keeps everything looking good. Another way that you can create guides that you can add to multiple artboards and update easily is actually by creating them as a component. So I can just use the line tool to create a guide here. Give this whatever color I like. We'll go with a cyan. And then what I can do is have this on the left, and I can actually move the X position by 30 pixels, and it moves it 30 pixels in. I can then hold Alt or Option and drag this to the right. And then I can go -30, just tag that on the end, and it will move it back in 30 pixels. So this is a really good way I found to create guides as well. We'll just match the height and make sure that these both snap. to the top of the artboard. So what I could do is duplicate this again, rotate it 90 degrees. Just double check the width of the artboard is 428. 428. And let's just get the height of these correct as well. Just make sure everything is in position. And then I could then go up to the top here and I could move this on the y-axis down 60 pixels, for example. So this is one way to add guides, and then I can create this as a component, select everything, and then right click, you've got Command or Control K. We've got a component here, and I can call this guides. This is a way that I like to use personally. And it now adds this as a component, and I can update this across any artboard on the document. So what I'm going to do now, though, is before we get into that, I'm just going to move this off the artboard. Because I'm designing for the iPhone, we are going to have curved corners, and there is the old notch as well. So, of course, it depends what iPhone you're designing for as well, as to whether there is a notch or whether you've got that dynamic island. So I'm just going to factor in some space here for this. Something like this. And I will just block this out with some gray, and we'll just round off those corners at the bottom. So something like this, and rounding those corners as well. So I'm going to create a circle, double click to go inside, hold Alt or Option, and click Delete, and it will remove that piece there. And then I can delete a couple more. Select the pen tool, click here, and hold Shift. And I've got this quarter segment. Let's zoom in a bit there. See if I can pull this back. There we go. Right, let's square all of this off and then give this the same fill color. Now, if you would like to know how to get the sizing of this correct, what I would do is I would hook your phone up, especially if you're on an iPhone, hook it up to your computer, download and open the XD app, and you get that real-time preview on your phone, and then you can match the curve here to the curvature of the device that you're on. So that's one way I would do it. Here, I'm just going to kind of guesstimate it. I'm just showing you the technique, really. And we'll rotate this like so. And then we'll do the same for the bottom as well. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color of all this by pressing I, and we'll just match it to the pasteboard around the edge. So you can see it kind of, we can see the edges of the artboard, but it gives us that nice kind of aesthetic where it blends in. And then what I'm going to do is select all of these kind of guides. Now I wouldn't export these as part of the final document. I would export this, but I can create this as a component, and I can call this phone guides. And then what I can do is actually lock this with Command or Control L, so I don't select it or move it by mistake, but I can now design with this. However, before I lock it, I will go back inside this component, copy just one of those corners, because I'm actually going to use these for the nav bar as well. So I'll paste this over here and just give it a really bright color for now, because I will come back to that in a moment. Right, email and password. There we go, let's add those in. Now we need some buttons. Let's get some buttons on the go. We've got create account. And we've also got log in. So let's make this one a bit chunkier. And we're going to align the text centrally as well. Make sure we've got central alignment on the text selected, so we can just do this and it will update. And let's copy this over as well. This is going to be log in. And then let's give this the background color, that darker purple, and we can deselect the border. Let's make the text white. And we can do that just by clicking up here as well. And there we go. Now, when it comes to things like buttons, these touch targets where users are going to tap or interact with the device, these are very important. They should be large enough that users can easily select them, but they should also be spaced apart enough so users with chunky fingers like myself can actually select the thing we want, rather than frantically trying to tap a thing and it not working. That ain't no good. Lastly, they should also be placed somewhere within the UI where they can be easily seen and acquired by the user. So one thing to consider might be, can the user use the app one-handed, or do they need to use two hands? So things like that, definitely worth considering. Okay, let's get back to it. Make sure we lock those guides again. So I'm really getting a lot of this set up on this artboard, and then I can just propagate that with copy and paste over to all the others. So I'm going to need my guides back now. So let's get those back on there. As I say, there's multiple ways that you can do guides, but I do quite like this, having it as a component. Just one of those things that works for me. So now let's select all of these and drag these out to the left and drag them out to the right. The only downside with these guides is they don't always snap as well as actual guides and things. So if I turn this off, for example, and switch on my guides here, you can see that they do snap a lot more, so that there is that downside as well. So despite what I said about using components for guides, I'm actually going to use the built-in layout grid because the snapping is a little bit more responsive, but also I'm only using these guides on the left and right edge, lining everything up. I don't need a crazy complex grid, so that is probably going to be the easier way to go. So we could set these. Yeah, so you could set the sides to 30 and that creates the same thing I was trying to achieve. And then you can adjust the gutter and the number of columns. But for me, I just kind of really want those side ones set at 30 pixels. I try to work in multiples of 5 pixels generally. Now those guides are a bit too prominent. I'm gonna go with, no, let's go with 5%. Eyes aren't as great as they used to be, Dan. So we'll go with that. And, but yeah, so as I say, there's lots of different ways you can do it. But I've got that guides component there as well. So yeah, it's entirely up to you how you like to work. But you can see these guides are now on all of these artboards. So what I can do is select everything. There we go. And when I say everything, I mean just the artboards. And then I can propagate those same guides as well. We'll pick the color, we'll go with 5%. So I've changed the values for one artboard, but they haven't been applied to all of the others. So I'm just going to take a second now to update that grid so it's the same across all of the artboards. So normally, you know, you could spend a bit more time doing these, but I only kind of really need those side ones. And maybe one across the top. Apart from that, I'm good. And the reason I say that is because here I'm just going to drag this up, hold shift and press the down arrow key, that's 10 pixels, and then a single arrow key, press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's my 15 pixels. So as I say, I try and work in multiples of 5, and these kind of smart guides show me all my spacing there as well. So as long as I've got those left and right edges all good, the spacing kind of vertically between UI elements, you know, I can manage that here. You can see it shows me in real time kind of how things are spaced. So we've got these boxes over here. I can now actually drag these over. In fact, no, before I start dragging these over, let's create some components. So let's go and create a component here. And I'll call this text box. And we'll go and enter a value here. So we'll go your name. I'm actually going to pull this to the left a bit. Now the reason I'm doing this slightly differently to these two up top is because these will have icons. So let's add this one over here. And we need to get that in the center. And then we can go create username. Again, 15 pixels. There you go. So you can see it's automatically helping me with that spacing, and it identifies what it thinks I'm trying to do. So it can kind of tell that, okay, you've got multiple elements and you're spacing them apart. Now, this is the master component as identified by the solid fill diamond in the top left corner. These are all instances. If I change the master, the instances get updated, which is incredible. So there we go, that's that. I'm just going to go and check the sizing here on these ones. In fact, actually, what I could do is, this is an instance here, so I could go in and you can see I can move this one instance. So let's use this for the email. Duplicate that and the password. So as I said, they are going to have icons, which makes them slightly different to these other text boxes. However, if I were to go in here and let's say make the font bigger, it still updates those with component overrides. So it will still update those elements because they are instances. And in fact, I need to add the correct font. I can do that from here, and you can see it updates on all of them. So that is pretty handy. And in fact, the color as well. I want the color to be not totally black. So we'll make that a little bit darker there. So you can see what I mean about trying to design smart. So let's add that dark gray here as well. That's the color for the text. This is where our graphic is going to go. And we've got a create account button down there. Now what I'm going to do is make this one a component. And we'll call this button 1. And we'll call this component button 2. So you can see as I'm designing, I'm starting to build out this library of components. Let's just make sure that they are the correct width. I don't want to be a few pixels out. We need precision here. This attention to detail is important. Okay, create account. And then let's go and put this at the bottom. Now to get this 30 pixels from the bottom, if I wanted to, I could just hold shift and go 1, 2, 3 on the up arrow key. So generally this is how I kind of space things. It's just by using shift and the arrow keys. And it helps me get everything kind of nicely lined up. Now here is where the keyboard is going to go. I do actually have a keyboard graphic. And I think you can download this from Apple's own website as well. So I've got the project files, I've got the keyboard. We can pop that in and just snap that to the bottom. There we go, we've got the forgot password link. And in fact, actually, you can see these text links here that you can assign colors to these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 797E8D. And I'm going to do the same for this one as well. And then for the larger 24.1, I'm actually going to use this color here. So colors are a factor in your character styles as well. Yeah, so you can see that then gets updated to every instance as well, which is fantastic. Okay, so we've got our login button up here. In fact, we can just literally, just duplicate all of this up onto this artboard, remove what was previously there, paste it in, And this is generally how I like to work, gradually replacing the wireframe elements with the nice shiny design elements. And you'll find that as you work on the project more and design more elements, icons, things like that, the process will gradually speed up where you're reusing those elements across different artboards. So this is going to be the email password login screen. And then once you start typing your email or your password, it's going to slide up here with the keyboard, and then you can carry on typing. Create account is looking pretty good. I think it's time to grab that graphic now. So let's go and import this. Where are we? Here we go. Let's move this out of the way. Now what I'm going to do is just use the rectangle tool to isolate this graphic here that I want to use. Make sure that shape is on top, right click, and then go mask with shape. And you can see it's masked there. Now I can just pop this in here and resize it. Let's hide the grid and the guides for now. Now what I would do is I could import this as a transparent PNG, but you can also change the blending mode here as well. If you just like to get something in XD and get rid of that background quickly to get an idea of how it looks when designing. But of course, when supplying this to a developer at the end, you'd need to supply it with transparency. Otherwise you are going to get that white box. But for now, that looks pretty good. Let's just move that up there. Make it a bit bigger. There we go. So you can start to see it is gradually coming together. And as we move over to the right-hand side, the speed is going to pick up as well. Let me show you what I mean. So over here, we can just drag that, go visit store. There we go. Snap that like so, get the spacing correct. Got the right fonts in there. Just check we've got the right fonts here as well. I think I might go with, we'll go with the bigger one. Let's change the color to white. I'm going to round off those bottom corners with, I think we might go for 16. And then we'll round off the top two with 16 as well. And yeah, let's drag this up. I think we'll drag this up, and actually we'll round those top two corners off as well. Send it behind, because then what I can do is I can actually add a lovely drop shadow. So we'll offset this down and to the right slightly, and we'll give this a delicious amount of blur, maybe a slightly bigger offset. And then set the color to like 10% or something. Something really subtle. And whilst we're on shadows, something to consider is the direction of the shadow. Because generally in UI design, it's good practice to have your shadows and imaginary light source casting them all pointing in the same direction. It's a subtle detail, but one that can stick out and not in a good way if ignored. That being said, later in the course, I am going to be a bit naughty and use a drop shadow to separate the nav bar from the background. Now this is quite subtle and I think I get away with it, but yeah, definitely something worth bearing in mind. Then we've got our profile picture. So let's go and get our picture of Mr. John Smith. And another way we can bring this in is we can just drag this onto the object and it pops it straight in there. So really quick and easy. And let's break that component apart. As I said earlier, that's probably what I was going to do, and I did. We can drag in Lucy Wallace, who is our user there as well. Make this a bit bigger. And then we can apply that lovely turquoise color to the notifications. And we'll pop that up there. In fact, I'm just going to make this whole nav bar one big component. And we can actually go and style that now as well. So you can see I've got this element here, this curve. What I'm going to do is the nav bar is going to be white. So let's create that. And we will flip this horizontally. Oh, not that one. Flip it horizontally and snap that to the right edge. Let's make the nav bar white as well. So we have this nice curve. The problem is these colors are very, very close together, so we can't really see it very well. So I'm going to select everything and then merge them together up here from the Pathfinder panel. So this becomes one shape. And then what I can do is go drop shadow. We'll try and use similar values as we did. Oh no, I need to, there we go. I need to move this up. So let's change that X offset to 0. So the shadow is only moving upwards. And then I can increase the blur. Go for something similar to the card as well. And it just adds a bit of a shadow there. And helps create a little bit of definition there between the background color and that nav bar. And I can get rid of the border here. So we have the profile picture. And here I'm going to have a couple of icons. So let's select this one. And we'll create a little rectangle there. We'll make them gray at first. I'll duplicate this down. So this is going to be like a link to your list of courses. So a really, really simple icon there. Let's zoom out and get a look at that. Now this is the only time we're going to be using it within the nav bar. So I'm going to leave it like this. That's fine. And I'm also going to create a cog icon as well for settings. Now, one way I can do this is by, well, we'll start with this, the same. Duplicate, rotate, select both, duplicate, rotate 45 degrees. I think I've made that a little bit thick actually, so we'll start by making it a bit thinner. Maybe a bit of trial and error involved here. So rotate, duplicate, rotate, there we go, that's the one. Make sure they're all selected and merge them together. Or if you want to round off the corners slightly, I would do that first, then merge them together. Let's do a bit more. Oh no, maybe 3's all right. We'll merge them together and then we'll just add a circle in the middle. There we go. And I can always come back and refine this if I want later. So what I can do is just move that into position, group those together, and that's not too bad for now, but I think I might come back and just refine that cog icon a little bit later. So we'll pop it in position for now, make sure everything is nicely lined up. Group those together as well. Just space them apart a bit. And make sure everything is lined up. A bit further. There we go. All good. So that will be the nav bar for the most part. So what I can do is just drag over everything now. And with it all selected, go and make that a component. And we'll call this nav bar. Now this is the master component. You can keep all your master components in amongst your documents. And if you ever want to find which one is the master, you just right click and let me move on to another document, another artboard. Right click and go edit main component and it will show you where the main one is. Or you can drag all your main components onto a separate artboard and just control them from there. So it's entirely up to you. And let's get rid of that old terrible wireframe one. And we'll pop that one over there. Make sure it's all central. And there we go. So if I change this icon later on, which I probably will, you can see I can move it, adjust the position, I can do anything, all from this main master component, and it will update those on the relevant artboards. Now we've got a graphic we can drag in here as well. There we go, that's looking pretty good. And we'll just finish up this one here. So let's go and add that lovely, delicious turquoisey color. We'll go with 14 on the size. We'll just change the color to white. And I'm going to round off those corners ever so slightly. Let's make that a little bit smaller. There we go. Make sure that is definitely in the center. Yeah, I'm happy with that. In fact, we can actually centrally align this as well. And then I'm just going to set the fill color for the progress bar as well. So I think that looks pretty cool. We'll just nudge that in the corner and then hold shift and use the arrow keys to nudge that up 10 pixels in, up and to the right. And I think this element here, I might make that component as well. So we'll call it, well, it's going to be a progress bar and a duration. So I'll just call it duration slash, oh, no forward slash. So we'll just call it duration. There we go. And then what I can do is there was another part. There we go. I can paste that in here. So that styling is consistent. Now you can see here, unfortunately, that's gone outside of the bounds of the box, which isn't ideal, but there is a way to get around that. What we can do is select this and go padding. And you can see we can control the padding on the different edges. So we've got 8 for the right and 8 for the left. And I've updated that on the master component. And oh, look, as you can see, it's updated that for this component as well. So now this instance of that component also has padding. The reason this is great is because now I can do this. I can type whatever I like and it will update the width, but it's still a component. So if I went back to the master, for example, I double click to go inside and I change the color to red, it updates that as well across everything. So yeah, it's pretty fantastic. So let's just add in that profile picture. So like I say, as I'm kind of adding these elements here and building them out in these early screens, I'm kind of just copy and pasting them over to the relevant parts on the other screens that we've yet to do. Right, well, I've been recording for over an hour now, and in typical British fashion, I'm gonna get a cup of tea. Oh, okay, I've had a cuppa, I'm feeling refreshed. Let's get back to it. So it's all coming together pretty nicely. I'm gonna copy this background for the card over as well because we've got that nice shadow on there. And well, I've made that a repeat grid group. Let's collapse that down now. We're gonna build out the proper one. Let's switch back on those guides. There we go. And we'll make the height, I think we'll go for, oh, let's go for 100. We'll round it out nicely. And I've got my play symbol somewhere. There we go. I'm going to actually round off these corners. So I can do this here, just round them off ever so slightly. And let's, well, first let's make that a symbol because we are going to be using the play icon multiple times throughout this design. So let's just have it all consistent. If we want to change it, then we can do it globally as well. So we'll go down here. Now we need a nice circle. There we go, nice and easy. And we're going to eyedropper tool. We'll just grab a gray for now. Or no, let's just use one of our grays. There we go, much better. Maybe a bit lighter. Now I did experiment with the idea of having the thumbnail of the lesson here in these circles, but it just ended up being so small. I thought it would be easier to just have an icon representing the distinction between a video lesson someone could watch and a lesson that is more kind of text-based. It might be a quiz or something else, like a practice lesson with a worksheet or something. Now, just looking at this icon, something worth discussing is alignment. Because in this example, you can see the play icon on the left is technically centrally aligned within the circle with an equal distance from the edge on the left and the right side. However, it looks off. So in these instances, we have to eyeball it and judge for ourselves if the visual weight of the design looks centrally balanced. One trick that can help with this is zoom out of your design loads, which can help you identify any alignment issues a little bit easier. It's a nifty trick. All right, we need lesson title. Let's pop you there. Pop you there. 3 minutes, 20 seconds. Let's change that to point text. We'll just line these two up, make sure they're aligned to the left. And then we'll go lesson title here. Now on the right hand side, I need this this identifier, whether the lesson has been completed or not. So let's shrink this down. I'm actually going to copy that same color and apply that as a border. And okay, let's go in multiples of 5. So I'm going to have the spacing. We'll set that to 15 in from the left and the right. And then we'll do the same for this. I'll go over here, go shift. That's 10. There we go. So we're just being consistent again with our spacing. I'm going to turn these guides off now because they're getting very distracting. So it looks something like this. That's looking pretty good, I think. Now what I'm going to do is do the other state for this. So we're going to need the check state. I've got my check here from the wireframe, so I may as well just grab that. We'll thicken this up a bit. We're going to round the corners, round the cap. And then we'll just pop that there. I think that looks okay. And of course, we'll need to change the color. So we'll go with the nice green turquoise fill. Make sure we enable that fill. And I can double click the check and just extend this out a little bit. Now, if I try and do this holding shift, for some reason in XD, it doesn't constrain that 45-degree angle. So I can just use the arrow keys to go up and to the right. That's a good, quick way to lengthen it. In something like Illustrator, it would kind of keep the extension along that 45-degree angle, but not so in XD. So that's kind of your workaround there. I think they're a little bit big, actually. I'll make those a pinch smaller. There we go. Something like this. It doesn't need to be too prominent. Make sure that is dead center. Okay, right, I'm happy with that. Of course I can change that, and I am going to make this as a component. So first of all, we're going to start with this inactive state, and then we're going to enable this one here. So I'm going to design this, I'm going to try and design it in a very clever way. So what I'm going to do is drag both of these on top of each other, and I've got my layers panel here so I can make sure I select the right ones. So we've got ellipse 11, 12, and 13. So these are my components. Sorry, poor choice of words. These are my layers, but I'm going to make them into a component. So let's go and do that now. Now within this component, I have my default state. So what I can do is I can add a new state, and we'll call this a new state. We'll just go with that, and we'll say checked. Now, if I switch back to my default state, so I'm now working on the default state, I can go inside this component from the layers panel. And what I should be able to do is hide the check and hide that turquoise background. Now, if I go back to the checked state, I should be able to go into this component, and I should be able to show both of these, and it comes back. I can now toggle between the two different states as part of this component. So this one here is the master. So I'm going to leave the master in the kind of inactive unchecked state. Let's make sure that is aligned. And we'll just set that positioning again. So we'll go for 15 from the end. So that component's all set up. Let's give that a name. We'll call it checkbox. And I think everything else we can pretty much leave as is. What I will do though is select everything here. I think I'll make this a component as well. So we'll go lesson card, and then I'll drag over everything and make both of those a component. So we'll go lesson card full. So the entire thing. So I can go back inside this and I got these two components in here that I can edit. Now the reason I've done this is because, let's see if this works with the repeat grid group. Hopefully, if I do repeat grid, okay, the spacing's a bit weird here because it's factoring in the shadow. So it's not actually going to be tight to the UI elements. So you can do this, but you have to eyeball it manually. And I'm a stickler for precision, so I'm not going to do that. But that's just one thing to bear in mind if you start adding shadows and things. If I want to keep the shadow, I'm just going to manually duplicate this. It doesn't really matter because I've set this up as a component. So I can double click to go inside this, make sure I select the checkbox, and I can change the state on this one. And you can see this is now this has a checked state. Now there was one other thing I forgot to do here, and that was to do the same thing for this, but have a text-based lesson. So let's go and grab this icon over here. I think we'll just reuse this icon for now, just to show you this this technique. Let's get my layers panel just so I can see exactly where I am. Okay, so I'll paste the icon in. We'll pop this over here. Maybe just bring it in a little bit. There we go. Okay. So we're going to go text-based icon. So what I'm going to do is select that, select the play button, and select the circle. Convert this into a component. Hopefully this works. It does get quite complicated when you've got nested components within components. Okay, so we've got circle, lesson, icon. We'll call it that. And again, I've got the default state up here. There we go. So I've got this master state now over there. Now, because I didn't have a master originally, what I will do is I will drag this inside. I think if you create a component when you're already inside a component, as you can see, it does get a bit complicated. In fact, that may be a limitation of XD. I might have to leave this out here for now. But now I've got the master, I can add a new state. So we'll set the default state. Let's just, we'll turn off the text-based icon because there's going to be more play lessons that you watch. So we'll leave that off. And then we'll change this text here to text-based lesson. And of course, we then need to go into the component, turn on that icon, and then turn off the play icon. And if we've done this correctly, we should be able to toggle between those states. So that looks cool. So we've got this working. That's a good start. What we could do, this might involve breaking this component apart, which would be a little bit annoying, but let's do it. Let's do it. We'll break the component apart just so I can nest this back in there. So we'll get rid of these lesson cards. We'll delete those and we'll remake them. So I should have set that up before. What we'll do is we'll pop that in there. Make sure it's 15 in from the end. Line everything up. And just check it works before we go ahead. Okay, brilliant. We're toggling. We are toggling. In fact, what I could even do for this state, just to differentiate it, I could just bring down the opacity to like 60%. So there's that little kind of differentiator between those two types of lesson. So that's set up. And we could just wrap this all in one card, really. That should work. So we'll go lesson card. Rather than having it in two separate ones, let's just keep it like this. And now the moment of truth, we check it definitely works. And I should be able to change this one here to a text-based lesson, and I should be able to mark this as completed. Cool, so now we've set that up. It just makes things a lot easier. And if I want to change the design or anything, I still have all that flexibility to kind of tinker with all of these different things. But those kind of things there, they're all set up now, so I can go and duplicate this. So you can see I'm not repeat grid grouping it, but it's not that much of a hassle to just go through and kind of do this. So let's make this make sense. We're going to check a few lessons. We'll uncheck some of the other lessons. And as I mentioned, most of these lessons are video based, so we'll have that icon appear. And let's snap these into position. I'll go 20 pixels there. And we'll double it 40 for the bottom. And then we'll just duplicate this down. So you can see there, it said it was 16 pixels away, but actually that's working from the bottom of this kind of bounding box around the text. So that's fine, but I actually want to do it 20 pixels from the text. Oh, 1 pixel out there. So there we go, 1, 2. So yeah, just something to be aware of when designing with text and objects. Sometimes your bounding box will be bigger than the text, so you have to eyeball it and make sure you're aligning to the text rather than the bounding box. Let's send that to the back. And then we've got the nav with that lovely shadow sitting on top of it. So there we go, we've designed that screen, but we've done it in a way that is smart, where we can update everything very easily. I will just move this up. Yeah, there we go. Fantastic. Cool. Okay, this one's pretty much there. We just need to add the correct button types. Where have I put them? Over here. And these are both components, so I can actually just drag both of these in from the components panel. We're just going to change the text. Let's get rid of these horrible wireframey buttons. Yuck. Let's get rid of those. And next, so you can navigate to the previous lesson and the next lesson. Now I want these to be the same width, and I want that I'm going to have 15 pixels between them. This is kind of one way of doing it. It's probably a little bit of a botched way of doing it, but I still do this. It's just one of those ways I really like. I don't know why, for some reason. It's quick, easy, and it works. So I set up 30 pixels left and right. I make that middle one 15, which is the kind of gutter between them that I want. And I just do this. They snap in place like so. I can resize them. And then I know I've got 30 pixels on the left and right edge. I've got 15 in the middle. And then I just simply get rid of those. Boom, there we go, done. Some people might look at that and go, that seems like a bit of a faff, but hey, it works. It's just one of those habits that's kind of stuck with me, I guess. Right, spacing here. We'll go for 20 pixels. Again, I'm eyeballing it rather than working from the bounding box. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we've got these down the bottom. Do I want them that close to the bottom? Not sure. What I will need to do is probably add this guide here. So let's unlock it, copy it, lock it again. I'm going to paste this on all the artboards, making sure it is at the very top of the layer stack. So there's nothing on top of it. And I'm just pasting it and locking it as well. So any UI elements that are going to sit quite closely to this, well, it's a good idea to kind of get this in place because it may inform some of your design decisions. So you can see I've got the curves added here. So if I were to position those way too low, I'd say, that's a little bit close to the corner of the display. So it's worth having them on there just so that you're better informed to make better decisions. Now, whilst we're on this screen, this is a good opportunity to talk about proximity in design, specifically with typography. And what I mean by that is considering how information that is related is presented. And in the example on the left, you can see this done incorrectly. We have the same information being displayed, yes, but relevant information is not grouped together, which can cause a user some degree of confusion. And on the right, you can see a good example of this being done correctly, where the title is paired with its related descriptive text, and there is a clear gap between separate pieces of information. So this is looking good. Lesson title there. Oh, let's grab this image. So what I'm going to do is just duplicate this out to the right. Let's find our image, this one here. Pop that in. We'll move this back. Send it backwards. And then with this top one, we'll just bring that opacity down a pinch. There we go. That looks rather nice, actually. I really like that. Now, I think this lesson, this bit up here is a little bit too high, especially with that notch going on. So I think what I'll probably do is just bring it down. And in fact, this text here is over 2 lines. So I'm going to right click this and reveal this character style in the assets panel, which of course is this one. And I'm going to reduce that leading a little bit. That is the space between the 2 lines, just so they're a bit closer together, just using that space a little bit better. So this looks good on 2 lines spacing wise. So now I've got to set it up for 1 line. Maybe somewhere like that. In fact, it might even be worth lesson title that spans over 2 lines. So this might be worth doing because I know that, you know, a single title is going to fit absolutely fine in this space, but I probably should design for 2 lines because it is a little bit longer. So it's worth considering that. Otherwise, you're going to end up designing for text that just spans 1 line, and then when you've got 2 lines or a longer title, it's not going to fit. So it's definitely worth considering. And in fact, that's generally a good thing to consider, which is designing for the worst case scenario. So a super long title and tons of paragraph text. If you can make that look good, well, you're sorted. The same goes for localization too, because some languages use a lot more words to say the same thing. And accounting for that space in your design is something worth bearing in mind. Let's just bring that down a pinch more. So again, this one I'm kind of eyeballing with the text box, just so that spacing is consistent. Now, arrow. Let's get this arrow icon in there because that looks, well, I mean, it doesn't look too bad, but we can make it look a lot better. So I think I'm going to right click this color and we'll apply that as a border fill. Round the corners and the caps off. That's looking pretty good. I think I'm going to pop it in a circle as well, actually. Circles are nice. We'll make the styling consistent as well with the same color. Something like this, and I could even just bring that line in a bit, which enables me to increase the size of the arrow if I want to. But I might leave it around that. There we go. That looks good. Let's make that a component. We'll call this back arrow icon. Of course, from the left, 1, 2, 3, 30 pixels. Consistency. I could break that a little bit. If I was planning to have titles here, I could push that a little bit to the left, but I'm not. I'm going to keep it there for consistency, really. And I would like this to be centrally spaced. So again, I'm going to use that weird little technique of just, I'm going to grab a rectangle, define that space, and then align this vertically. It's just one of those little things that I've always done, and I still do to this day. Icon size. How is it looking size-wise? Might make it a bit smaller. Again, this is one of those reasons why you might want to install the XD app, just because you're able to preview on a device in real time exactly how it looks. And of course, scaling this down now is giving me some problems, so I'm just gonna have to go inside that component and maybe manually just tinker with that. There we go. Cool, brilliant. 1, 2, 3, okay. We are good. Master component check. Now I can copy and paste that onto any relevant pages. So first of all, we've got the curriculum page. And paste it in exactly the same position. We've got the about page. Boom, there we go. And again, I'm going to make sure that this cover image starts at the correct height. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is the same image. I've just kind of used the same image here, just to keep everything nice and simple. And I could possibly just drop that opacity down a bit. Or, you know, we could remove that altogether and do something really cool. Let's duplicate this image of this fella here. We can increase the size. And if I pick a color, you can see it replaces the image I dragged in. So let's go with a white. We'll send that behind. And actually, if I use the eyedropper tool to sample the same color as the background, we get this kind of nice cutout effect. And I can group the image with that white or very, very light circle, and we get that really cool cutout effect. So yeah, I quite like that. And of course, we can double click the cover image, and that'll take us inside the image, and we can bump up the size a bit and adjust the crop. And I think that looks pretty good. Let's make sure all of this is using the correct fonts. Yes, we are. Centrally align everything on the artboard. Let's just make sure that text box is snapping to 30 pixels. Again, what I can do is I can drag that to the end and go -30. And I definitely know that it's the right length there. This text is too close together. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to edit this and again, adjust the leading. So 24, that looks good. That's a little bit better, I think. Okay, oh, the about text, I don't know where that's gone. So let's, we'll put that there, and then we're gonna line this up. So just check it's all good there, and then pop it back in the center. So that's about. And I'm gonna copy this arrow because I got that arrow looking really good. And let's just move this over here. Now I could just pen tool this and that would be fine. Another way to do this, and this is a good technique to learn, even if it's not necessary right now, it's a good technique. So I'm gonna do the radius, set this all up, get it in position so it's central, maybe shrink it down. And then what I'm gonna do is double click to go inside, hold Alt or Option and delete, and I can delete that point. That will make a break. If I don't hold Alt or Option, what it does is it maintains the connection, and that's not what I want. I actually want to break it. And then I can just delete round until I'm left with this. And of course I can round off those caps. And that gives me this shape in particular. And of course I can drag over these top two and nudge them down. And there we go, I've got a lovely share icon, which is probably too small. So I'll scale that up. Make that a component, share icon, and there we go. Oof. Now again, we're going to line this up, snap it to that right edge and go 1, 2, 3. And there we go. I know that the spacing is all good. So there we go, a share icon as well. Very happy with that. Now there is one aspect of this design I would spend a bit more time if I were to do this over, and that is making the border radiuses a bit more complementary to one another. Now this is especially important when you have, let's say, a rectangle inside of a rectangle, both with rounded corners. And a way to get these looking better is to take the inner rectangle, draw a circle that fills the radius exactly, and then scale it up from the center using Alt or Option and Shift until it touches the other rectangle. And then adjust the border radius of the outer rectangle so that it lines up with the circle, and voila. So yeah, super useful tip that's definitely worth bearing in mind. Now let's carry on. And I've got this icon here. Let's give that the correct color. Make it a component. We'll call this arrow. And I think for this, I'm going to use that same kind of card styling. Now you can hold Command or Control and click, and that will immediately select something within a component or a group, which saves you having to double click, go inside or anything like that. You can just grab something straight from within inside it. 1, 2, 3. drag to the end, and then -30. Okay, FAQ, let's put that text there. Drag to the left edge. I'm going to eyeball it, so that bounding box, and go 1, 2. And then the icon. Let's get that in position. And 1, 2. There we go. So sometimes you will just have to eyeball it. I'm actually going to make that a bit smaller as well. This is the master component I'm editing, so let's get that all good now. And yeah, 16 pixels radius looks good to me. I'll make this a component and we'll call this FAQ card. No, that's going to be confusing. We'll call this about card because we are going to have FAQ cards on the next page. And all the spacing here hasn't been done yet, so I need to turn that layout grid back on. And we've got to get everything snapped to the left. And then this, I'm going to set the alignment to right and snap that to the right. Now I'm also going to speed up this next bit, which is mostly minor tweaks to the styling and just tidying up a few things. Okay, now let's make that splash screen a little bit more visually appealing. Now if I jump back to the main title screen, I want to add a graphic here. So I have prepared this graphic here. This is also from Envato Elements. I love this. Really, really cute. Again, I could go and import this as a vector and all that, but I've got it as a PNG. So at least I can use this to see kind of what it looks like. And I'm actually going to rotate this a bit and scale it up, just so it fills the entire artboard. That's very important. And then I'm going to change the blending mode to multiply. That seems to look good, and bring the opacity down. Maybe 10 on the opacity, so it's really subtle. And yeah, I'm happy with that. Much better. So I've got a few more minor tweaks to do, and I'll see you in a sec. Now this guy, he's like a super popular premium instructor, so let's go and give him a little badge or something. We'll pop this here. Johnny Boy is he's one of the best, so we're going to give him a star. So with the polygon tool, I'm going to just create a shape, set this number of sides to 5, and then change this setting here. Just using the arrow keys to kind of bend that inwards. There we go. Really quick and easy way to make a star, and I can even round off the corners, not like that. Let's go for maybe 0.2 or 0.3, something really subtle. Just make sure it's in the middle. There we go. There we go. Super premium instructor John Smith has a badge of honor. Now something else I'm going to do is we've got this purple, which is fine, but I'd like to make it a bit more interesting. So I think this is the master. This is the master. Command or Control click to go inside, select the fill and change solid color to linear gradient. And what I'm going to do is I need these colors over here. So, well, I've got the first one already, so I'm going to copy this hex value here, this 6-digit code, and just select that other one over here, which is a much darker color. And we'll paste that in. And I'm going to have this going from left to right, I think. So we'll drag the darker color to the left and the lighter one to the right. And hopefully, if this worked, you'll see that that has been applied to every instance as well. There we go. So we've got that nice gradient on the buttons. Now I'm trying to find the master text box. Where is it? There you are. This is why it's handy to have your assets all on a separate artboard with all your master components. Now I'm actually going to go inside here and change that border color. There we go, something like that, a bit more subtle. And I would like to apply that gradient to this splash screen as well. So let's select the right layer. If you're having trouble, just use the layers panel to make the selection. And then we can just extend this so it covers the width and height. And of course, send it to the back. And let's get our our corners and our notch on there as well. There we go. That's a much more attractive looking home screen, I think. Now I'm going to speed through a few more minor design tweaks. These are all using techniques we've covered so far in the course. And then we're going to move on to designing a few additional icons. Now I've got a couple more icons to do. I think we're almost done. So we've got an email icon here. We're just gonna do this. Round off those corners slightly. And then with the pen tool. There we go. Literally that simple. And I think for a lot of kind of basic icons, XD is absolutely fine, especially for kind of wireframing and stuff. Like the drawing tools for that are more than capable. What's this email icon? There we go. But if I was doing like a full-on app and I had like lots of icons, I would probably design the set in Adobe Illustrator or something if I needed to. I don't know why I copied that then. Just because, as I say, there's a few more tools and different things you can do. Okay, so let's go and make a circle. 2-point size, we'll set the color to the same. And remember, double click, hold Alt or Option and click Delete to remove a corner, or a segment I should say. And that will ultimately leave us with this. You can probably guess what this icon is going to be for the password. And we'll just draw a really quick keyhole. There we go, 2 points. This is going to be quite chunky actually. And then we'll just do a bit down there, 2 points. That's very chunky. Unless what I could do is make the inside of the icon a bit thinner instead. Make that a bit thinner there. Round off that radius and then select these and merge them into one shape. Oh, that top bit's a little bit big. Let's make that a bit smaller. There we go. Let's convert that into a shape. There we go. That is much better. Yeah, that's not too bad like that, I think. So we'll convert that into an icon. Password. Icon. There we go. Make sure it's central to the icon above. And central here. Yeah, that's looking pretty good, I think. Move that up. And actually, one last thing I will do is I'm just going to go to the title text that's 24 pixels, and I could change this to a slightly heavier font. So we could go with a medium or perhaps even a bold. And you can see as I'm changing this, it's updating every single instance of that across the entire document. And apart from a few more minor details, I'm pretty happy with that. And there we go, that wraps up the course. So if you made it to the end, well done. We've covered a lot of different things, and hopefully you can now take everything you've learned and apply this on your next creative project. As always, a massive thank you to Tuts Plus for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be here. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.